Is everyone settled? Should we start? Yeah? So good morning. Welcome everyone to our session, Economic and Social Policy, the Cost of Not Being Clear. My name is Linh. I am a Press and Communication Officer at the European Commission's Directorate-General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, quite long, and I'll be a moderator for this session. We have two speakers today. We have first Ingrid HAUSSTEINER from the Austrian National Bank and the European Central Bank. She will discuss clear language in their annual reports. And we have Martin O'Brien from the European Economic and Social Committee. He will discuss clear language at the committee, and he will also lead us through an interactive writing exercise. So excited about that. Please note that after both their presentation, we will have a Q&A session, so keep your questions and comments for that part. And we are very delighted today to welcome participants from 21 different countries with very diverse background and experience from across communication, policy, and academia. So thank you so much for this global audience and very diverse. Okay. You know the drill. A Slido question. Please pull out your phone or go online. Actually, yes, scan the QR code in this case. And please submit your answer. The question that we pose is, what is the greatest cost of being not clear in social and economic policy? And I'll give you 1 or 2 minutes to answer.
We don't see.
You don't see. Do you see it now? Yes, thank you. One participant. Interesting. War. 15 participants. Great, so we see, injustice. This is one the big one. Injustice, loss of productivity, misunderstanding, harm, people not understanding and therefore being less likely and less willing to comply, gray. Harm, injustice, and inequality. Loss of trust, lack of economic growth, lack of information equity. Thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. These are actually the types of challenges and the types of topics that our dear speakers will cover in their presentation. We will get back to the Slido in the Q&A. Thank you so much for participating. So let's have our first presenter, Ingrid. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Linh, and good morning, everyone. I have to comment on the war mentioned here because that's how I chose the language I studied, English and Russian, because I started studying in 1985, so when we still had the Cold War. And unfortunately, we've come full circle. Today, I want to talk about what it takes to make a publication more readable and more relevant, and shorten it at the same time. Because that's what we had to do at the Austrian Central Bank 2 years ago in 2023 with our annual report. I coordinated the drafting process together with 2 economists, and we managed a team of some 25 authors, all specialists in their various fields. And we needed to get them and their high-ranking managers on board. So the first thing it takes for such a project to succeed is a clear official mandate. And in our case, this mandate came from our top management, the governing board of the Austrian Central Bank. And it was the result of a 1-year review where many of us, including myself, had their say. The goal was to streamline the production of the report and increase its reach. Our mandate focused on 3 pillars: the content, the process, and the people involved. Today, I'm only spotlighting the content part. We had to shorten the report from some 100 pages to an ambitious 30. We managed 50 in the end. We had to highlight 3 to 5 topics relevant to the public in that year, in 2023. And of course, we also had to deliver the Austrian Central Bank's key messages, and we had to do that in a language that also interested non-experts would understand. As coordinators, it was clear to us that we would be held accountable afterwards, because that's the flip side of having a clear official mandate. So just paying lip service or giving in to resistance would not cut it. To act on our mandate, we sought answers to the following questions before we started drafting the report. First, what's most relevant to our readers, the public and some other target groups? Second, what else do we need and want to tell them? And third, how can we make our messages stick? To give you one example of a relevant topic, in 2023, the high inflation had affected everyone. And since central banks are responsible for keeping prices stable, we explained in our report why inflation was so high and what we, that is the European Central Bank and the national central banks, were doing and had been doing about it, instead of just chronicling from January to December monetary policy decisions, instruments, operations using jargon. Next, we had to agree on the key messages of the report and of each section, and front-load the messages. Front-loading your messages is essential. Why? Just imagine, if people only read the headings, the headlines, or the first few lines of a text, they should already get what's key. And to make our messages stick, we decided to craft engaging headings, put it simply, and keep it short. To be sure, well, you will still find a term like macroprudential banking supervision in our report, because that's what we are in charge of. But we explained it, what it means, and you can do that in one sentence. As was to be expected, some colleagues came up to us and challenged us along the lines, this is just the annual report, who's going to read it, and so on. But most also understood that it's important to deliver answers to the public's pressing concerns. That's part of our job, after all, and that's how you build and preserve trust in your organization. Still, I have a question for you now. What do you think is a good way to convince economists and like-minded expert authors? Any ideas? How would you go about it? Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah, figures. Mm-hmm. Well, I would also say using evidence and fact-based arguments, and most importantly, charts. Yes. That's the currency of economists, you know. And we used this chart to present research that shows the cost of not using plain language. We showed it both to our authors and their managers approving their texts. This research illustrates the huge gap between how institutions and corporates communicate and what everyone out there understands, in this case, for Germany. Language proficiency is measured in line with the Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, which organizes language proficiency in 6 levels, from A1, most basic use, to C2, most technical, most complex, and at the highest level. So let's have a look at the gold columns, and you can tell I'm from a central bank. It has to be gold columns, right? So the gold columns show the language that corporates and institutions use. And we see that some 75% of corporate communications is at C1 or C2 level. at the highest, most complex level. Who would understand that? Well, let's take a look at the blue columns. They shed light on people's language skills, language proficiency. Ouch, only 7% of the population understand C1, C2 communication. This chart was an eye-opener for my colleagues. They needed to see and hear this. So to be clear, if we as an institution or an individual writer want to reach a wider public, say 75% of the population, we will have to communicate at B1 and or B2 level. And by the way, that's also the level that journalists normally aim for in their articles. So if you write at C2 level, they will have to translate that. And this opens room for misunderstandings. So far, so good. We had found some allies. But as a long-time translator and editor at the Austrian Central Bank, it was crystal clear to me that it would not be enough to tell the authors, please write at B2 level, or please use plain language. How should they know what this means? And I asked myself, wouldn't it be better to empower them first? Luckily, I was one of the coordinators and already had a solution in mind. We were able to hire an external trainer I had heard of. He had already taught workshops at the German Central Bank. So he had experience not only with central banking topics, but also as a journalist and economist. So he offered high credibility and great expertise. We invited the lead authors of the report to participate in a 2-day off-site workshop with this trainer. And we asked the authors to send in text samples beforehand because all of the theoretical inputs during the workshop would be followed up with hands-on exercises. And people would be working on their and their colleagues' texts also. Another coordinator of the drafting process and I also participated. Remember, our authors are economists, researchers, analysts, statisticians, so they are used to working with some kind of model all the time. So from a psychological point of view, offering them a model as foundation for writing in plain language was a really neat thing to do. Our trainer and we chose the Hamburg comprehensibility concept or model, which was developed for German in the 1970s by university professors. And this model rests on 4 dimensions of comprehensibility: simplicity, structure, brevity, and additional stimulation to engage the readers. The aim is to write texts that are simple, well-structured, compact, and appealing. And the model gives you strategies how to do just that. I was really glad the feedback on the workshop was ravishing. Just imagine you're an inflation expert and you're sitting in this workshop and now some of your colleagues, a financial analyst or a banking supervisor, a statistician, a digital euro expert, they have to rewrite a paragraph of one of your text samples in plain language. And right there you get 8 versions and they all mean something different, what you had wanted to say. It can't have been that clear-cut, right? Just imagine then what the public, non-experts would make of such texts. Experiencing that firsthand and getting that kind of feedback from other PhD experts, and not only from linguists, was another eye-opener. And again, to be clear, editing the annual report 2023 was still hard work. I did it together with this external trainer. But the authors had already done a better job, and they knew that we were editing for clarity. And according to an external evaluation that was carried out afterwards, we had clearly met our mandate. So, to wrap up, let me spell out some benefits of communicating clearly. First, readers quickly find and understand what's relevant to them. And maybe they want to read more if they find the text accessible. Second, more people can benefit from our expertise, and that's crucial for public institutions. Third, journalists, and I forgot, of course, influencers, and other readers do not have to interpret or translate our key messages. And fourth, we get our messages across in the way we want. And last but not least, in the era of so-called artificial intelligence, clear content and clear language are becoming ever more important. Wouldn't you agree? Thank you. Now I would like to hand over to Martin to continue.
So good morning, everyone. So my name is Martin. Hope you're enjoying today's session. Hope you find it useful so far. So as Lynn said, I am a translator and editor at the European Economic and Social Committee, and I'm also a clear writing trainer. So I'd like to talk to you about some of the specific challenges of clear writing at the European Economic and Social Committee, and some of the ways we try to write our text more clearly. But first of all, I'd like to give you a brief introduction to the organisation I work for. So the European Economic and Social Committee, or the EESC. Sometimes we refer to it just as the committee, but that could be seen as an example of jargon. And jargon can be a bit of a touchy subject in clear writing circles. A bit slower, sorry. Yeah. Okay, so the ESC was set up in 1957 under the Rome Treaties. It's an advisory body of the European Union with representatives of employers, employees, and civil society organisations. And these representatives are known as members. So the committee's main task is to issue documents called opinions. And these are addressed to the Commission, to the European Parliament, and to the Council. And they're adopted on the basis of consensus. And these opinions cover the full range of EU issues. So one of the ways in which the committee raises awareness and promotes its opinions is to publish press releases. But I'm going to talk about that in a bit more detail later on. So what are the specific challenges of clear writing at the committee? So one specific challenge is the opinions themselves. So these can be the result of a long and complex process involving many people. There can be several authors. They can come in several stages. Sometimes the original language can change. And as the document works its way along the production chain, there can be amendments, and there can even be amendments to amendments. So the challenge is, how do you ensure that the principles of clear writing are respected in such a long and complex process? So the main approach we offer is the editing service. So all of the opinions are edited, and we aim to ensure they're edited by the same person, and this ensures consistency throughout the entire process. So another important element is the possibility to engage with authors, to ask them questions, and to suggest simpler alternatives. So once the opinion has been edited, translated, and voted on, the next challenge is to produce a press release. And here we have another clear writing challenge. So how do you turn something that is technical, intended for a specific audience, into something that's more accessible, more digestible, and more accessible to a wider audience? So on this particular point, the committee has offered targeted clear writing training for its press officers, and I'll talk about that in a bit more detail later on. So the committee, like other EU bodies and institutions, faces challenges when it comes to clear writing, and one specific challenge is jargon. So the kind of terminology used in-house. So we know what we mean, but maybe you don't. So there's the challenge. And here, as the title of today's session suggests, there's a real cost to not being clear. So the committee's role is to act as a bridge between decision makers and the general public. So if jargon stands in the way of the committee being clear, it can come at a cost. So in the training courses we offer for the committee's press team and the communication directorates, we draw attention to the issue of jargon and how it can creep into your documents. So this could be due to time pressure, copying and pasting from reference documents. It could be contributions to your document from several people. And then, living in the EU bubble, jargon can start to sound kind of normal. So even for me, things that sounded strange in the past, now they sound normal. So for example, if I go on a language course to a different country, I go on mission. So in the past, I thought only James Bond or Tom Cruise went on a mission, but no, translators also go on missions. So one thing we try to get across is to take ownership of your documents from start to finish. So be aware of the jargon and don't just accept it. There could be clearer alternatives. So what kind of clear writing training do we offer at the committee? So first of all, we offer the general clear writing course. So this is a 2-hour course. It's fun, it's interactive. There's an exercise that participants do during the course. Recently, we've organised targeted training for press officers and for the communication directorate, and this is more geared towards their specific needs. And then the latest initiative is the clear writing practical workshops. So these are 1-hour online classes with a maximum of 5 people. We take one principle only, we look at it in more detail, and then participants rewrite a short text applying that particular principle. And then we discuss it in the group. So on the next slide, I have an example of one of those exercises. Here it is. So this is a short letter created especially for the workshop, and the theme is keep it short and simple. So I'd now like to invite you to have a go at doing one of these exercises. So on your desk, you should have a copy of the exercise. So I'd like you to suggest ways to make the text shorter and simpler. So I'll just read out the text first of all. Here it is. So, I'm writing to inform you about a brand new initiative in the framework of the committee, the Clear Writing Awards, the aim of which is to identify and reward examples of clearly written text at the committee, and to be a replica of the success of the Commission Clear Writing Awards, which have been running for a number of years now, hoping that the awards will afford an opportunity to raise awareness of the importance of clear writing, as well as have a positive impact on the quality of committee texts. You are encouraged to apply. So, does anybody have any suggestions? How could you make this text shorter and simpler? Any ideas? Don't be shy. Yes, please.
I would start with the last element.
Yeah, okay.
So the encouragement to apply, the first sentence. Please click on the mic to make sure. Sorry. Yeah, I would move the last item. You're encouraged to apply to the front position, and then reformulate it. Something. This is a draft version, but something like. I don't know. You may be the next award winner of the Clear Writing Award. So apply, yeah, and then add a date, and then explain things.
Something catchy and in the reader? Yeah.
So I just have a question before I even start is, it's a brand new initiative, but we've been running it for a period of a number of years now. So is it now brand new, or has it been going for a number of years?
Then it's still brand new.
It's not the EU way.
You don't need to refer to the Commission at all. Just do your own thing.
Any other ideas? Yep.
Well, you've mentioned the committee, but not everyone's going to know what that is. So maybe explain, maybe say first that it is the European Union Committee, the EESC.
I also noticed that the whole text is just one sentence, so it could be good to split it into several shorter ones.
So I really like the first suggestion of bringing the last point to the beginning. So let's say, apply for the Clear Writing Award, so we invite you, and then explain why, maybe with bullet points. So this will help reward good practices, make more people aware of the benefits of clear writing, improve the quality of committee texts, increase the impact of what you write.
Yeah. Would you like to see a new version? Okay, here it is. So you may disagree. So here it is. This is a potential solution. So I always emphasize the word potential because there's more than one way of doing this. So what have I done? So I've broken up the paragraph into two sentences. Sentences. And then I've front-loaded the message, as you suggested. So you are invited to take part. So in the first version, we had, you are encouraged to apply, but it was at the end. And in the new version, it's at the very beginning of the first sentence. Some of the superfluous wording in the framework of, it's kind of a typical example of jargon. So I've removed that. Often comes up in our documents. And then another clear writing principle, I've replaced some of the nouns with verbs. So instead of positive impact on the quality of committee texts, to improve the quality of committee texts. So there you go. Any questions about that?
Well, sorry, it could be also shorter. Aim is to raise awareness. It could be the second period, in order to reinforce the message and the goal to obtain.
Oh, sorry.
Sadly, I'm a journalist.
Could you switch on your mic?
Is it on?
Yep.
Yep.
I was just to say, I'm a journalist, as one of my sins. Brand new, wide brand in there. And at the end is another word. I mean, I write a column where I have a strict word limit, 400 words a month. Several years now. Why now? You want to shorten it? Shorten it. If I've
yeah, very good points, yeah. Yeah, please.
I would make it much more personal. It's still, and we do the same in the Commission, it's still fairly formal. You are invited to take part in the initiative, will identify and reward. Why not just simply say, we will? it makes it. I would approach this as a kind of a communication campaign, and really, or even a kind of a publicity or PR.
Yeah. I would even go further in the personal. I like that. But not just we, but also the you, like your clear writing, yeah, could help us raise the awareness of the importance of it for the whole committee.
I'd go further even, make it more active. The initiative rewards examples of clearly written text at the, whatever that acronym means, and get rid of acronyms. I know you're talking to an audience, but we are not an audience as well. We don't work in the organisation. So be more active. It builds on successes of the Commission, you know, present tense, not future tense.
Would people understand that they were to apply for this when you say you are inviting them to take part?
That is a good question. Yeah. So I think it depends on how the email finishes too. I think if you have the entire email, it would be clearer. But that's it. Yeah, valid points. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you. Tying in with what's just been said, would people understand? I think before we start with this exercise, it would be important to define who people are, who's our target audience, and what's our intention with the text. Are we trying to motivate them to apply? Are we just informing them? Those are two things I would clear up before starting. Also, who's our target audience and what level in the language do they have? So I have clear parameters to work according to. Like, I have a bit of a hard time with make it simpler. For who, why, and to what level exactly?
Who's your reader? Who's your target audience? Yep. Okay, you're getting warmed up now, so.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah. I would just say also another suggestion is to use headings, because most people skim, and so just go directly to, you know, clear writing awards, how to apply, and I would give a timeline also, like make your call to action really specific.
I'd like to say that the
Well, I tried to ask to Gen AI. Well, I don't like too much the results, I must admit, but anyway, it reduced the text to 47 words. Of course, the length of a text is not the only way to measure the quality, but anyway, it can give us some indications, some suggestions.
Okay, so I'll just show you the next paragraph. So this is we don't have time to do this, but so this contains most of the key details. So the award criteria, the deadline, and the date and venue of the ceremony. And this is a potential solution. So the main approach here is to use bullet points So in that way, the key information stands out. It's not a block of text. So yeah, anybody have any questions about that?
What size print? 8 point, or 12 point, or 14 point? Because I'm talking about 2 to 10 pages. I've seen things come in which are definitely about 10 point and far too long.
To run this exercise to get some direct feedback, you know. So good. Okay.
Can I, sorry. First of all, I would change the heading. Important information. Information is an empty word. It doesn't mean anything. Okay? So you could enter directly to the solution to what you want to obtain.
Hello, thank you. I actually think the bullet points are working in the wrong way. I think we have two kind of categories. There's a category for the types of submissions, right? And then there's deadlines, key important dates, and to the point of the headers, the important information. I think by changing those categories, splicing up the information, we can then use bullet points with the award criteria. All those bulleted of information are in 2 lines, not bulleted on their own lines. And so I think organizing in that way and using bullets more strategically could help that information pop and be more descriptive and make sure that we're not missing those important deadlines by just burying them in a list with that needs more refining in terms of hierarchy of information, I think.
Would you like to define what a false friend is, please?
So a false friend is so it's a word which looks like another word in another language, or maybe a direct translation of that word looks like another word in another language. So for example, to foresee, so prévoir in French, prévu, it's not the same meaning. But a direct translation looks like the same word. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I've just been naughty and wicked. But I mean, if you want to length, why not limit it to the number of words? You know, 500 words, 250 words. You know, I've been a judge on many awards, and I've given up the will to live after the 10th page. And especially if it's all in management speak, which needs clear language, you know, and immediately down to the bottom of the pile. But give them a word limit. Make them disciplined.
Thank you so much, Martin. Thank you so much, Martin and Ingrid, for your presentation, and thank you all for your very active participation in these exercises. It was really great. So now let's open the floor for the Q&A session. First, does anyone have any burning question or comments that you would like to share with us or about what? Yeah, great, thank you. Please activate the mic.
Yeah, is it on? Yeah. Hi, thank you so much, Ingrid and Brian. I actually have a question for both of you. Maybe I'll just, I don't know, should I ask them both or maybe ask one and then we'll see? I don't know. Ingrid, I was wondering in your process if at any point you actively involved your target audience by, for example, asking them, what would you like to read in our annual report? Because I notice when I give advice to organizations about clear language, one of the first things I try to do at the first stage is involve the audience. But there is always a very huge resistance to this. And I wonder if you also met this resistance and if you involved the audience. Thank you.
We were lucky that this entire project was visible at a very high level. So we had press officers involved and other people. We, at the central banks, had things going on like listening events where people went, our governing board members. They went out into all the cities in Austria and they talked to people. So we knew what people's pressing concerns were, like the high inflation. Also in Austria, the lending conditions were very strict. And so people had problems getting a loan to buy a house. Yeah. So we really used all this information, which we had gathered from other events, and then said, okay, these were the 3 to 5 topics that were most relevant to the public. So I think we tried to do that, but not in a very, in this, just for the annual report.
Yeah, very interesting, thank you. And for Martin, I was wondering, when you give these trainings, is it only for English or also multiple languages? I work here in Brussels, like in the city of Brussels, and one of the issues we, I mean the region, we see is that texts are written in French, and going from unclear French to clear Dutch, because we are bilingual, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it's close to impossible. And we always wonder whether the advice about clear language is easily transferable from one language to another. Also because French, there are different emotions I find when writing in French. It's not as easy to get away from these long sentences and formulations as it is in Dutch. So I was wondering what your experience is with that.
So we do courses in English and French. So I don't give the course in French, but the same principles apply. So yeah, we do promote clear writing in other languages. And the workshops I mentioned, there's an idea to kind of to roll those out in other languages too. Yeah, to try and get sort of clearly written texts from the very beginning. Which are then easier to translate. And then you avoid misunderstandings further down the line. But the specifics of clear writing in French, I couldn't give you an answer on that, but a course does exist, so it's possible. Yep.
Is it on? There is a red light. So I'm from South Africa, and we have 11 official spoken languages, and then we have sign language as our 12th official language. And I work with a lot of people that work in very different languages. A lot of our indigenous languages are actually not originally written because it was orally transferred, so it was difficult to put it on paper, and with that comes a lot of vocabulary issues that we don't need to discuss. But what I can tell you is, if you are working with people that are willing to go through the effort, we have a whole movement in South Africa on Afrikaans for plain language, and it's gewone taal, and yeah, we're rewriting accent things in that language. So it can be done, and we wish you luck.
Any other questions? Yes, please. I have a question for both of you. It seems to me that you've been working with a lot of high-level people in your organizations, and I wonder what it is that you think experts want in terms of what's most persuasive to them regarding plain language. Would it be case studies? Would it be research? Would it be the fact that we now have an ISO standard? What do you think managers want to see? And I'll qualify that, not all managers are experts in any domain. Some of them are just promoted through the ranks, let's put it that way. And some are high-level executives like and knowledge people like the ones that you mentioned who are working in the economic area. And you mentioned them being persuaded by charts and graphs. And that's clearly something that happens all the time. And I was just wondering what you think works.
We still had some resistance. So we also had to maybe frame it a bit differently. Also the way we called that kind of language we were striving for. because in German we have easy to read language, and we have, if we translate it literally, it's like simple language, and this would be plain language. And we already have our TV broadcasting company, they publish news in this simple language. So some people say, every time I hear that, I turn off the radio. I don't listen anymore because, you know, I'm an expert, I'm an academic, I'm a researcher, I don't know. This is not my level of language. So we had to kind of rename it, what we are striving for, and we called it differently in German. We called it comprehensible language, verständliche Sprache. And it's different, you know, all the quality papers use that kind of language. And so it's for everyone who is pressed for time and who needs to understand things. And why should people know about monetary policy? Why should they understand what a counter-cyclical capital buffer is? So really, people told me, but we need to use this abbreviation. Everyone knows this. Come on. Okay, so we basically had to show them the target groups we had defined for our publications, or for this specific publication, who we wanted to reach. We had to tell that, you know, you can reach more people. If you write in that way, more people get what we are doing at the central bank, and we have to legitimize ourselves and all that. So you have to take different approaches. I had lunches, I had coffees with authors and so on, because it's the same way when you start and write an email, maybe not everyone will be reached, but you have to follow up with maybe talking with your friends and inviting them and telling them how cool this is and so on. And most of our, I think, directors, they go out and meet the public. They have to hold press conferences and all that, and they know how to adapt their language. So I think it's all this mix of things you have to do.
And that graph that you showed us, the language proficiency gap, is actually evidence-based, that people will not understand it. I don't know if Martin, also you want to talk about this, the fact that do we need to reframe, to rethink the way we see clear language, so it's not just a useful add-on, but it's more of a necessity?
Yeah, so I think to answer your question, it's kind of it's a work in progress. So we try to promote clear writing through our courses, and through the workshops in particular. It's kind of like a bite-sized 1-hour course. So people don't have a lot of time. So maybe doing something short, quick. People are more likely to sign up and get involved if it's a 2-hour course or half-a-day course. Maybe people think it's not the top of their to-do list, yeah, I think at the moment clear writing is seen as something kind of nice and useful, and maybe it reminds people of a language course they did at school. It's kind of fun, but as Ingrid said, there are consequences to not being clear. So perhaps Ingrid's report won't reach its target audience. In the case of the committee, jargon can stand in the way of the committee performing its role. So I think what I would do, I think I'd make some kind of clear writing training compulsory. So I think it could be just even like a half-an-hour taster. So, you know, when people join an organization, there's a compulsory package of courses. Maybe you can make clear writing one of those courses. So it could be a half-an-hour taster to begin with, and then if people want to carry on, they can do a general clear writing course. They could do targeted training. They could do a workshop. But I think some kind of compulsory training to raise awareness would be a good approach, in my view.
Yes, please.
Sorry to keep intervening. I mean, I kind of have come on this from all sorts of angles, because I'm also a trainer in the health sector, which has a language entirely of its own. In UK, we have a very high-end type of food called alphabeti spaghetti, and I think some of these people have swallowed alphabeti spaghetti because they speak in jargon, in acronyms, But the other rule, when I train people for the media to speak, and a lot of the communication that organizations like this will rely on in the end is, you know, this, and it's not written text, it's people speaking. So the average, just your graph there, confirms that the average reading age of the majority of people is not very high. Hence, in the UK, where I come from, the red tops, which are the tabloids, they, you know, stories are literally paragraphs. We had our Chancellor of the Exchequer making a wonderful speech to no one yesterday at prime time, broadcast time, and she talked about supply side, and I mean, she was using such rubbish, no one knew what it was, and all it did was leave leeway for the journalists to read between the lines and do their own interpretation. And I guess if you're going to convert it to what you're doing, if you're a bank, people's savings are at risk, people's livelihoods are at risk. I'm afraid I was the person who put the one word in there, the consequence of bad communications, war, because that's really what could happen. And, you know, Vladimir Putin makes a point of this. He's invaded another country because of his interpretation of history, and his words are trying to convince other people. I rest my case, Your Honour.
Yes, please.
Well, I also teach in a university in Italy, which is a bilingual university, since it is in Südtirol, where they speak German and Italian. And with my colleague, we made a research with students of the high school and the university in order to understand whether they understand the term of use for the online services of a company producing biscuits. And the result was very interesting because we gave them two different kinds of texts, in Italian and in German, both the original one and the plain language one. And the difference is really relevant, and not only in understanding, but especially in using. And so the result was, if we use a plain language text both in Italian for native Italians speaking, and both in German for the Germans, but also the contrary, the German text for the Italians and the Italian text for Germans, I mean, they are all Italian, but they speak German, the result is always much more clear, much more effective for when we use plain language. And so I think this is another opportunity of studying for all those regions, all those countries where there are more languages, more official languages.
Yes, thank you. I'm also from South Africa, and I still remember when I got my bank's annual reports through the mail, and I would diligently just throw them away. So the question is, who is the target audience of a bank's annual report? Because if the general public wants to know and needs to know, as you've pointed out, that food prices are going to go up in the next year, will they ever consult an annual report?
That's a good question. I mean, we should make a difference between commercial banks and central banks. Because central banks, we're a public institution, we're an independent institution, and the Eurosystem, which is the European Central Bank and the national central banks of the countries that have the euro, we are in charge of interest rates, setting interest rates, and determining whether people save more or whether they spend more, and so on and so forth. So as you say, we had this kind of challenges that people said it's just the annual report, but the annual report is followed by a press conference where the journalists will have all these questions. And if you as an institution had already agreed on the key messages and how to put them in a language that also, I can say journalists now, because also understand, you know, and maybe not the wider public and that, but journalists, they usually, they produce an article and it's going to be published the next day in all the papers, and maybe they will also talk about it on TV and on the internet. So our target groups are decision makers, journalists, not so much the wider public, but they will be reached through other channels. Because, for instance, at the European Central Bank, they also publish on the interest, it's not the annual report, but when we have monetary policy interest rate setting meetings, then they publish on Instagram and on social media also like really plain language visuals, where they say why didn't we change interest rates and so on. So I think it's all mixed together. The same people who write for the annual report, they maybe also contribute to financial literacy texts, because that's one other task national central banks have to take care of. So I think you should not divide and say, okay, we only focus on press releases or we only focus on social media, the annual report. It was a starting point for us. Now we have a 4-year campaign, so we offer these workshops on clear writing for all kinds of people in the bank, and we created some kind of hype. So everybody wants to do that workshop now, because we don't offer them like for everyone, but you know, just maybe 5 or 6 times a year.
I hope that answered our question. Is there any other question? Yes, please. Sorry, can you...
Hello. I wanted to come back to the chart about the language proficiency, because for me it was very surprising to see, and I think I never thought about it in a way to use the CF, well, the framework for languages also for native speakers. And if it's really the case that the level of an average native speaker of a language who is not an expert is around the B1, B2 level, that's really, I think, eye-opening for language professionals.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that when we talk about plain language that people tend to use, because almost everyone is familiar with these from learning foreign languages. And we know that when you graduate from high school, your English level in Austria, for instance, would be at B1 or B2, something like that. And I also noticed that some of the AI tools that are now on the market for rewriting texts in plain language, they also use these kinds of levels, because all the readability indexes, I think most of them were developed for English. And we don't have that in German always. For instance, in Microsoft Word, you can have a readability statistics for English texts, but you can't have that for German texts. So I think that's what we kind of agreed on, to use that, because people usually can relate to these 6 language proficiency levels. And it was an eye-opener for me when I heard it at a conference maybe a few years ago, how many functional illiterates are there. So, yeah.
Any other comment or question? Yes, a last one, because we... Yeah.
Is that like this? Can you hear me? Okay, just a quick insight from a lawyer, mediator, and a coach. When I heard you talking about your experience with training managers and institutional people into clear language, it sounded to me like your job has 2 different fields, 2 aspects. One is technical, and one is mindset, because you're actually coaching these people out of their own resistances from learning, using, and also suggesting other people to use, and so to promote the clear language. So I wanted to give you this feedback, which could be maybe interesting to you.
Need a change of mindsets. And sometimes when I reveal the solution to an exercise, there's like a gasp in the room, like, because they don't like the solution and they think it's dumbing down, they think it's lowering the quality. So what we try to get across is it's not about dumbing down, it's about being understood. So your main objective is to be understood by your target audience. So that's the message we try to get across. So definitely a change of mindset is needed. Yep.
Yeah, simpler language does not mean less professional, less credible. Actually, increases the credibility and the trust in what you're doing. Thank you so much, everyone, for your very active participation. It was really great to have all those comments and all of those questions. I will invite you to, before we break for about 10 minutes, I will invite you to join us in the harvesting session at 12:45, so in 10 minutes, in the main room. Each of the breakout session will be summarized by the people participating in the session. So hope to see you there. Thank you.